after not making any moves yesterday before the trade deadline, then following that up by giving up 50 in one quarter to the Warriors, who they haven't beaten in the regular season since Christmas Day of 2014. As we all know, since CP3 and Blake Griffin teamed up, LA hasn't gotten out of the second round of the playoffs. Max, let's stay with this theme. Yep. Is it time to blow it up?
No, it's been time to blow it up. You're a day late and a dollar short at this point if you're the Los Angeles Clippers. Look, if you were just to stack the talent over the last several years in the NBA, Clippers are talented as anyone. You know, you look at Chris Paul, a perfect point guard, Blake Griffin, an unbelievable superstar. DeAndre Jordan's come such a long way and turned himself into a frontline center. They've had incredible talent, but it's not formed right. It's not in the right shape. If you look at the modern NBA and how you play five out, how the Warriors do at least, and they're the dominant force in the Western Conference, you need to either be able to do that to address, by the way, Will, the strategic difference is you actually have to address Draymond Green. You know, you have other point guards, not as good as Steph Curry, who can shoot from 7 feet out and still hit threes, Damian Lillard and others. But what makes the Warriors different is actually Draymond. So you got to address that. Or if you say, no, we're going to zig while everyone else is zagging, you got to be able to exploit the Warriors in the post, which is not exactly DeAndre Jordan. I mean, if he catches it right around the basket, he can put it in, but that's about it. And Blake Griffin Doc Rivers doesn't seem to use Blake that way against the Warriors. Or Blake doesn't seem to be willing to get down there. So you're not you have the talent, but it's not formed in the proper way if you just stacked it high, but it's not specific enough to address the Warriors. So they needed to move someone like a year ago, but Doc Rivers, the GM, is undermining Doc Rivers, the coach.
Yeah, and that person needs to be Blake Griffin. I agree with you. These three, we all become enthralled with the idea of a big three. Get 3 stars to superstar range players, and you can compete. But these three, we have seen their ceiling. They've had multiple years now where we know they can't advance to the Western Conference Finals. They're now, what are they, 4th in the Western Conference, and they're in a bunch with they're not with the Rockets and the Spurs. They're down by the 5th, 6th, 7th seeded teams. This is where they are, and the team they have to beat, Max, the team they have to beat in the end is blowing them out by 17 points, by 44 points. Granted, Chris Paul wasn't playing last night when they lost by 10, but it seems like the question is this: where is this going? The upside for this team and these three, we seem to have found it. We seem to have found the ceiling for Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Jordan. And I agree, what they need is, what they seem to lack is that A1, that player that you know the ball is in his hands at crunch time. Chris Paul can be that guy, but it's the wing they need. It's the guy that can take the ball, score from 3, drive to the bucket. Sure. And I think Blake Griffin is the tradable asset that can get you that. I heard you and Stephen A. debating this the other day. Carmelo, if there was a place that Carmelo fit, this was it. It's time for the Clippers to see if there's another mix. It's hard. But you say, we've got the 3 guys. We add a 4th. If we can add just a good wing player, then we're there. But they failed on that quest. They failed to find that 4th guy. Now it's time to find out if they can find a 3rd guy who can be their number 1.
Carmelo would have made a lot of sense because he wouldn't have been that difficult to pick up. If you're willing to part with Blake, you could have probably done a 3-team deal, gotten Carmelo and other stuff, and that would have addressed what you're talking about and ultimately acted as a lure potentially for LeBron James as Dan Gilbert really sours that relationship, because LeBron's always said he wants to play with Chris Paul and Carmelo Anthony, and there they'd be sitting in Los Angeles waiting for him with DeAndre Jordan. And here's why it was so important that Doc Rivers, the GM, get this all right. And I'm not just talking about him handing his son, who was like a bubble D-League type all-star level player, like he's like really good for the D-League, maybe okay for a backup almost in the NBA, not quite. And he's made improvements, but not worth the contract that Doc handed him. I'm not even talking about that. I mean the stubbornness. Part of what makes Doc the coach great is his loyalty to players and the way he believes in them and gets them to believe in themselves and rally around each other. But that stubbornness, Doc Rivers, the coach, has affected Doc Rivers, the GM. And why has that been so important? Why is it so important for the Clippers to get this right now? Will, I was just in L.A. doing a radio show with Marcellus Wiley and Sports Nation for almost 6 years, and I can tell you that town loves the Lakers and does not care about the Clippers. And the Lakers are going through the worst period in the history of their franchise in L.A. by far, it's not close. The late, great Dr. Jerry Buss, greatest owner in the history of American team sports by far, passes away. The team's in turmoil. The Chris Paul trade doesn't go through. They reached a very, very low period in their history. And it's ripe in L.A. right now, particularly with exciting players like Blake Griffin, for the Clippers to win a lot of those young fans in L.A. And instead, what we're seeing is the Lakers now look like they're going to be on the rise. They have cap space. They're under new direction. If Jim Buss was holding them back, that's been addressed now. And how many playoff wins do the Clippers, even wins, do the Clippers have to show for this, by far the greatest era in their history? A handful, more than the Lakers in their worst era? I mean, this was the window for the Clippers to make inroads in L.A. They're failing to do it because Doc Rivers, the GM, Doc Rivers, the coach, is talking Doc Rivers, the GM, into making bad decisions.
Yeah, I don't want to make a habit of agreeing with you too often, but I actually think that window is on the window to closing. As you said, it's overripe. It's past time to have changed the equation. And it's fascinating, Max, that it was just a short 2 years ago that we were talking about the Clippers and everybody flying to Houston to keep DeAndre Jordan. Everything looked so rosy, and this was going to be the three that took them to the future. And the Mavericks got completely derailed in the process. And here we are 2 years later, and did that really work out? Not that DeAndre Jordan's the problem, but these three as the nucleus. Is that really going to work out? I think we already have the answer.
They've never been to a Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I think we have the answer.
Max, on that note, it's been 46 seasons that the Clippers haven't reached a conference finals. That's the most in NBA history by far. Not to pile on, just did. Let's leave it there, folks. Up next, the Celtics were involved in rumors for a whole bunch of players, but decided to stand pat at the trade deadline. Does this mean they gave up their chance at winning a title this year? Plus, Charles Oakley was at the Knicks game last night, sitting next to an owner. No, not James Dolan. Again, you're almost there, folks. Good day. It's First Take. Thank you so much for being with us on a Friday. Max Kellerman is in NYC. Stephen A. is off for good reason. He is getting an award. Congratulations to him. But you know this man. We're in good hands. Will Kane in the house for a full 2 hours. Looking forward to this.
Glad to be here.
It's going to be fireworks. Good to have you. You ready to work,
Molly,
Max?
hey, Will.
How we doing?
Molly, I can just say now, I mean, it's 2 hours from now. I cannot wait to hear your final take on Jameis Winston. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, I might have went in. So people, please stay tuned for that towards the end of the show. But you know who else went in? Draymond Green. Thanks for queuing me up, Max. He never shies away from a microphone or a technical, racking up his 11th of the season last night in the Warriors' 10th straight regular season win over the Clippers. Green was talking trash all night, even telling Paul Pierce he won't get the farewell tour Kobe got, as his coach prompted them to play with more emotion, and his fire lit up the rest of his squad, who put up 50 in the third quarter alone. But when you're living on the edge, or in Draymond's case, playing on the edge, sometimes it's fireworks, and sometimes you get burned.
I wasn't arguing, though. I said how.
Oh, whatever happened.
How many arguments you got into your life and you said how? Answer the question.
A couple, maybe.
A couple. And all your response was how, and there was an argument.
You never know with girls sometimes.
All right, I agree with you. But if you just say how, that means you're getting argued at. You're not arguing if you say how.
I told him, I said, let's see if we can take a different tack, and myself included, let's lay off these guys, I want Draymond to go right up to the edge and not cross it. And that's asking a lot because it's, he plays right on that edge all the time. That's why he's so great. That's why he is who he is. We need that from him.
As we all remember, in last year's finals, Draymond's suspension clearly held them back from winning another title. Max, will his dramatics hold them back again?
Well, I don't know if you can even say that it held them back last year because you're comparing him to himself. Look, the answer is no. He's not going to hold them back from winning a title because that assumes that you can find someone else who can do all the things he can do and have the emotional temperament to just to taper it back a little bit so nothing bad ever happens. That's assuming a lot. Who's like Draymond Green? He's an elite defender at 5 positions, which means he can switch and everything, pick and roll, doesn't matter the combination. He can play in any lineup and against any lineup. And that alone would make him a very, very valuable NBA player. But that's not all he does. He also shoots the 3 well, which means that defenses are sucked out and it allows everyone else space to operate. They can play 5 out. He also runs the floor very well and exhausting the other bigs. He also is an unselfish player and he's high energy and leads them emotionally at times. So when you look at that entire package, you can say, if only he was on the other side of the emotional line sometimes, he wouldn't have been suspended in Game 5 and they would have gone on to win the title. But without Draymond Green there, who says they're anywhere near a championship? I will remind you that in Game 7, down the stretch, if Steph hits one shot, Draymond Green is the MVP of the finals. That's a finals that included LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Kyrie Irving. One shot, 1 3 that Steph would have hit, and Draymond, in the last 4 minutes of the game, Draymond's the finals MVP. I don't see how you can say that guy holds you back from winning a championship.
Because his question isn't theoretical, Max. He already has. If we're lining up the ifs, ands, or buts, if we're playing the games of abstractions and what could have been, trust me, I'm making fewer leaps than you are. Draymond getting himself suspended in the finals last year most certainly cost the Warriors their championship. 3-1 lead, Game 5 suspension. You think if Draymond plays in that game, the dominoes don't fall in a different way? Maybe they'll win that particular game, Max, but momentum shift swings are huge in a series like that. Draymond getting suspended and costing his team a title isn't theoretical. It's been done. And what I would offer you this is he might be the only thing that can cost the Warriors a title this year. I mean, if I were making a list of things that could deny the Warriors a championship this year, he's definitely top 3. LeBron Magic, again, greatest player in the world, rises to the occasion once again. Maybe Greg Popovich runs some Greg Popovich magic in the Western Conference Finals. But 3, right there in the top 3, is Draymond Green implosion again. Molly alluded to it. No. You said this. Live on the edge.
Will, if
Genius lives on the edge constantly. But Draymond's problem is he crosses over the edge. You heard it from his coach. We can all see it. It's not talking trash to Paul Pierce, by the way. It's this nonsense kick to Blake Griffin. I don't know if we've been playing that video or not. But this crazy, flailing, childish kicks that he throws out. It's blowing up on Kerr on the sidelines. These are the kind of things that can derail what is a historically great team.
If something derails the team, it's going to be the interior defense against a team that can post against them. And I don't know who that team is because they don't have Bogut anymore. That's the kind of thing that'll derail them. Look, teams with players who have the kind of personality that Draymond does, or fiery temperament, key players with a fiery temperament, I think of Dennis Rodman a lot. Of course, the question is always, ultimately, if they succeed, can that player walk on the right side of the line? And LeBron James, to his credit, identified that emotional weakness in Draymond Green, exploited it, got him suspended for that one game. But the fact, talk about theoretical, you don't know that they win that game with Draymond or the series with Draymond. That's theoretical. Nevertheless, all you're saying is Draymond can be an even better player if he checks his emotions at times, at just the right time. That's not saying that he's going to hold them back from winning a championship. I will give you an example. Will Kane. 1926. Babe Ruth
modern era, huh?
is caught. He's tagged out. He's tagged out at second base to end Game 7 of the World Series with a slugger, Bob Musial, at the plate. He's thrown out trying to steal second base. Wasn't a very good base stealer. He's thrown out in Game 7 of the World Series. Babe Ruth cost them the World Series, except that the only reason they're in Game 7 is because Babe Ruth hits them to the World Series and then hits home runs during the World Series to take it to a Game 7. Did Babe Ruth hold them back from winning a World Series? You're comparing him to himself. He could be an even more perfect player. That's all you're saying about Draymond. Wow. He's not going to hold them back because he is one of the key reasons they get as far as they do.
I certainly respect your baseball knowledge. I do. It's impressive. 1929 evidence might be a bit dated.
1926.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me add 3 years to that equation. 1926 evidence might be a bit dated. Let me let me rely on something a little more recent, if you wouldn't mind me. Just indulge me. I know a guy who argues debates on television often named, Max Kellerman. And Stephen A. Smith, and everyone I've encountered over the past 6 months who have constantly told me that the problem with Tony Romo is this, that the best ability is availability. The problem with Tony Romo isn't his play, it's whether or not he's going to be on the field. How many times have I heard that argument? What did you put the over-under on?
Sure, 1 million.
Okay. It's the same with Draymond. If he's not on the court, he hurts his team. You can, and you're right, all the statistics you rattled off about what Draymond brings to a team. No one's argument is that Draymond isn't a great player. Draymond is a great player. But greatness, and even more than greatness, genius, lies on that line that Steve Kerr mentioned. The line, but the edge between complete and utter success and complete and utter failure. Draymond, too often, crosses over. We can lift him up.
I'm not arguing that. Of course, Will, you're right about that. Of course he would be, but what you're saying is he would be even better if he could walk that fine line more expertly. Yes, we agree with that. He can be a more perfect player, and that would make the Warriors even better. But if there was no replacement for Romo, if you didn't have Dak Prescott, and Romo got hurt, say, in the Super Bowl, and yet you still almost won, you would be on TV arguing with Stephen A. and me, how could you blame this on Tony Romo? Without him, he didn't hold them back. Without him, they wouldn't have gotten as far as they did. And by the way, again, address this point.
All right.
He's one Steph Curry shot away from Finals MVP. How does that guy hold you back? He was going to win the MVP. It's not his fault the team didn't score in the last 4.5 minutes of Game 7. One score, and he's the MVP.
First of all, let's take a moment to just acknowledge the genius that it takes to turn a Draymond Green topic into a Tony Romo topic. Let's just talk about the genius it takes to force the Cowboys
I appreciate that I'm alive
into
for that
any
reference.
equation.
I will give you that.
But I don't think I'm stretching here. The thing is this, Max. I understand. You can find ifs, ands, or buts. You can find missed threes. You can find other players that didn't rise to the occasion on the moment they were needed. But Draymond is a pattern of behavior. It's George W. Bush's famous line, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me... No, I'm going to mess it up just like he did. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. It's now on us. It's now on the people that keep making apologies and excuses for Draymond. There are two moments that you need last night. You need to see that kick against Blake Griffin and know that it's a pattern of behavior that goes now, half a dozen deep. If you think it's a good bet to say that won't happen again in the NBA playoffs or in the finals, you're making a bad bet. But more importantly, Max, real quick, more importantly, it's blowing up on Steve Kerr like he did last night because that shows internal team dissension. They keep a cap on it. We've heard the locker room stories. They've kept it wrangled. I question how long you can do that.
There's no question, Draymond, were he to control his temper in those moments more finely, he would be an even better player. That's a long way from there to he's holding them back from a championship when he's one of their most important players on one of the greatest, at least regular season teams ever.
I don't think he's holding them back. I think when you line up the risk factors to a Warriors championship, he's in the top 3. He might be number 1.
Speaking of...
I mean... risk factors to winning another one. Go ahead, Molly.
Speaking of blowing things up, the Clippers might have wished they did that on the wrong side of that game.